Hi, everyone. Megan here from Romance by the Book with the lovely Marielle.
Hello, hello.
And this is March, and we are reading Frostbitten by Rebecca Zanetti. It's book 6 in her Deep Ops romantic suspense series, which I really love. And it just came out like a month ago, so we're excited.
Yeah, it is a good standalone. Like there are clearly relationships that have been previously formed,
hmm
but I think you can read it as a standalone and not be lost or anything.
I agree. And I think part of that is sort of because Millie, the heroine, is like a little bit outside of the original like group. Like she's worked with them before, but she also gets assigned to other cases. So she's not like part of that like nucleus that formed in
That's
the
fine.
first like 4 or 5 books. And so I think it's an easy place to jump in and start.
Yeah, and her hero too seems
Right. And
like
he's sort of the same.
he's
Yeah.
not aware that he's part of the group either.
Right. They all consider him part of their group, but he's like, I mean, no. So we start with the prologue, and our hero, Scott Terentson, who is a lawyer, is headed to a meeting with an investment banker named Mr. Dearth. On his way down the hallway, he recognizes this HDD agent, Millicent Frost, who he's worked with before, who is disguised as an HVAC repair person. And he's like, WTF.
We do immediately get the sense that she is so cute
Yeah.
in
Oh,
all her
yeah.
like iterations. But
Yeah, for sure.
he's there really to like drop off some stuff. He's working on a divorce case that he is doing strictly as a favor to his mom. But the husband of this divorce case is a real jerk, and so he's just kind of like he's dropping something off.
Yeah.
And
The
it's
husband had asked for like an accounting of of the wife's, like,
like her
purses
closet.
and stuff, and I guess expected her to come and, like, deal with him, and so when the lawyer shows up, he's pissed because his little, like, plan to torment his soon-to-be ex-wife didn't work, and the lawyer's like, "Yeah, you're never gonna be alone with her again. Like, sorry, not sorry,"
Hmm.
basically. And so he drops off these papers, um,
There
and
is a clause, we find out during their meeting that there's a clause, in the divorce that, like, if there's infidelity, then she receives, I guess, money
like, a
that she
better
wouldn't
settlement, yeah.
otherwise. And so, Scott is kind of like, "We all know that you cheated with this 18-year-old who, like, went to Australia without her phone or something, like, has disappeared." So
Conveniently.
the
Yeah.
guy's like, "We'll prove it." So we already know that Scott has run into a bit of a snag in
Mhm.
that, like, there are things that would benefit his client that are clearly, like, known,
Yeah,
but there's no, like,
no
proof
proof.
of it. So
Well, and he's thinking to himself, like, he's glad he decided to do his mom this favor because her friend, the soon to be ex-wife, is very sweet, and this guy's a piece of crap. And he's like, at least I can like help her.
mhm,
Um, so he leaves and he goes outside and he waits by his car because he knows that Millie's gonna come out eventually,
yeah.
which she does. And he wants to give her a ride back to the office. She tries to refuse, and he's like, I'll throw a fit right here in the street if you don't get in the car. And she's like, oh, fine. So she gets in the car
Yeah.
and,
So
she
she's
won't
clearly
say why she's there.
undercover, so him making a scene and drawing attention to her is a problem, which is why
Right,
the only reason
exactly.
she gets in the
And
car with
because
him.
she's on a case, she won't say exactly why she was there, other than it's an active investigation, which obviously he already knew if she's there. And he has always been intrigued by her, like you said, that's clear. But she doesn't like lawyers. That's the way she put it to him, and that's the way he thinks about it. He asks if she can tell him anything useful, like about that guy or his business or anything. Um, and she says, "Well, I mean, his assistant was blowing him when I accidentally walked in the office when I first got there." And he was like, "Oh shit." Like he knew that he had cheated with this other person, but clearly this is like a thing that he does. So now he has proof that this man is cheating. But she's
But
there.
he doesn't, right? Because there's no like, he doesn't the only proof he has is that this girl said so.
Yeah.
Um,
Which I mean, she is a federal agent, so like her
no,
testimony
but I mean,
probably
it's not like he can tap into a camera or has like,
right.
we don't at that point, he's just saying like, "Oh, thanks for letting me know."
Right.
and he will continue his investigations and she will continue her job, and they
And he asks
part
her to
ways.
dinner, and she says, "Are you still a lawyer?" "Yep." "Then not a chance." And she gets out of the car, and, that's the end of the prologue, which is very funny.
Yeah.
So, we come back 2 months later. Millie is on the witness stand in this divorce trial, and she wants to kill Scott because her boss is sitting there in the courtroom, and he looks livid because she's about to have to blow the fact that the reason she was in this guy's office is because they're investigating him, and she's on the stand, so she can
Well,
say, like,
she
"It's an investigation, I can't say," but, like, the fact that there is an investigation at all is something that he didn't know, and they didn't want him to know, and now he does.
well, also, like, so it's not even that she has to say, that man's lawyer has done research on who she is,
Right.
and therefore, like, I guess I guess in an ideal world she could have gone in and been like, I am the HVAC tech and I did see a thing, but they
Right.
knew that she's not an HVAC tech.
Right.
And so it's like her cover was blown.
Yeah.
Also, they have like video surveillance out from outside the bank of her like getting into his car, which she did not want to do to begin with. And so they're like, you guys are lovers, and
In
he's using,
cahoots.
and you are like using your position as, in this job to like help him with his like
Divorce case.
divorce case, which is not at all what happened,
No,
but there's no
but
like
it sure looks like
receiving
it.
it.
And in her
So
head before this, she's thinking, about why she doesn't like lawyers, and it's because she was a foster kid, and a series of lawyers basically ruined her life as far as she's concerned because her and her brother wanted to live with their great aunt who
who
wanted
wanted
them,
them?
but she was single and never made that much money, and they always argued that a foster home was better, which of course it wasn't, and, like, eventually, when nobody else was left, they agreed that the kids could go there, but she went through years of trauma basically because they wouldn't just let her go where she wanted to go, and that's why she doesn't like lawyers. So, she, of course, does answer the questions, some of which she just basically says, "I can't answer that because ongoing investigation, whatever." Um, and the whole collaboration thing that they accuse her of, I mean, it's a total shit show. And so she's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna get fired. Like, this is it. I'm screwed." And so Scott, might have I mean, this was like a preliminary thing, like, it wasn't the real trial, but, like, he was hoping that they didn't have to go to a real, like, trial, and now they're pretty much gonna have to, and he's pretty mad about that. Um and she, of course, is big mad about this whole situation. And then as she's leaving, Dirth, the man, in question, grabs her arm and threatens her. And mid-threat, she gets a phone call from her brother, which she answers, and their great aunt May had a heart attack, a small one, and she's at the hospital. And so, Millie has to drive. It's like 2 hours to West Virginia where her aunt lives. And
That man
he's
is
still
very upset that she is like not paying enough attention to him,
yeah, he's
which
still holding
is,
her arm.
yeah.
"Don't
Well,
ignore me."
yeah,
What a
he's
prick.
he's the he's a piece of work. But
Yeah.
Millie's just kind of like, okay, well, bye. I have bigger fish to fry, and he's kind
Well,
of
and
like,
she
you've made
actually,
an
like,
enemy of
physically
me.
shoves him hard enough that he's a lot bigger than her, hard enough that he lets go of her arm, and she says, "Touch me again and you'll regret it for the rest of your life," and then she leaves. And, um, you get the sense that, like, now he's even madder than he was, like, she probably needs to, like, look out. So, the next chapter is Millie waking up, brain a mess, head hurting, naked next to the body of her ex-boyfriend from high school, Clay, who she hasn't
She's
seen in at least a year,
she's also like sitting in blood. Like she's like
covered in
her
blood.
hands, and she's got blood on her. He obviously is dead. So
Yeah. A
and
knife
she
that
finds a
she
knife
made, like, it's like a gadget thing, like a fancy gadget knife that she made whatever
for
years
fishing
before,
purposes.
is clearly the murder weapon and is also laying there in the bed with them. And she's like, "Oh god, like, what do I do?" And
The
so
interesting thing is it's not like it's a knife that she had on her that
right,
she recalled, but she
yeah,
just but it's there and it's hers. and she doesn't remember how she got there. She remembers getting to the town that where her aunt is and like
Right.
visiting her aunt in the hospital and leaving the hospital, and then she doesn't really remember anything
Nothing.
else.
Yep. So she calls the local police department to talk to the chief, who she clearly knows because it's a small town and everybody knows everybody, to report like what's happened. So Scott is getting ready in the morning, looking at his like scars. He's got a pretty bad he in an earlier book in this series, he got shot and almost died in a case he was
And that
working on
happened
for the
like a
team.
year ago.
And so he's like looking at all his scars and stuff and just kind of ruminating on like where his life is and like what's going on with him. And he's got Roscoe, the German Shepherd, who is a retired like service dog, who like was I think he was a drug dog or a bomb tech dog, I can't remember, in the military. And he belongs to Angus Force, the leader of the team, and he's out of town at a conference, and so he's like dog sitting. Um, and his mom calls to check on him, and he's had quite a bit of ennui since this whole like shooting thing. Like he doesn't really know if he's still happy lawyering, but like he doesn't know what else he would do instead. And it's all very like up in the air for him, it feels like.
He's having like nightmares too. And
Mhm.
so he's kind of, he says a few times that he's kind of a hot mess.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
um, yeah, he's trying to
And
kind of
so
get
after
his
he talks to his
life
mom,
in
then he
order.
gets a call from the chief of police in Shalebrook County, West Virginia. He found Scott's card in Millie's jean pocket, which he handed her at the courthouse because he's like, I'm going to fix this. Like, you're not going to get fired, like it's okay. And he freaks out. He's like, oh my God, is she okay? And he's like, not really. She's been arrested for suspicion of murder and she needs a lawyer, like right now. And then he's
And
like,
he
also,
is also like, she'd be real mad if she knew I was calling you, but
she
you
said she didn't
probably
want a lawyer, but she needs one, so you need to come. Um, and so he gets there, 2 hours away to West Virginia, and the chief says the county prosecutor is out for blood. Like he really like wants Millie for this. And I think I wrote in my notes like Dearth might be involved in this. Like he threatened her, and the next day she wakes up next to a dead body. Like that's crazy. Um,
and
and so
he did say things like, you don't know who you're messing with, and like
mhm,
you're like, it was very like you
very
it did,
threatening.
my brain also was like,
Yeah.
does he have something to do with this? And
Yeah,
then
like, how connected is he? Yeah,
yeah, and as soon as the prosecutor is also like convinced and ready to convict her immediately, it's like, oh, okay,
yeah.
okay.
And so Millie is, of course, not happy to see Scott. She wouldn't be happy to see a lawyer, period, but she's really not happy to see him after the day before. Um, and so, she tells him what she can remember, which isn't very much. She went to the bar for a drink, it was St. Patrick's Day, after visiting her aunt, and then she woke up in the bed covered in blood. Like, that's literally there's, like, nothing in between for her.
And she
Um,
says that she doesn't usually drink very much anyway because
right.
she doesn't, I mean, she's just not a big drinker. So she's like,
Yeah.
usually I would have like one or two drinks maybe,
Mhm.
but she's like, but I don't even remember
Like, I
what
remember nothing or, like, even hours before that.
happened.
And the chief did get a blood test on her and a rape kit for her, and it was clear that she had not had sex. So even though she's laying naked in the bed next to her ex, like, that did not happen. Um, and so the
Which
ch
Scott is like very relieved
yeah,
to hear that, like, I mean,
yeah,
she's in big trouble and obviously something terrible has happened, but at least
not that terrible
yeah,
thing on
not
top.
those two.
And so she made bail, and, the chief's like, "You can go," but the county prosecutor, walks in a tizzy and, like, doesn't want him to let her go, but he's like, "It's too bad, like, she already made bail."
She may fail, yeah.
And so he's like, "I'm gonna bury you if you killed Clay." Like, he's clearly a friend of the dead guy. And so she
And
and Scott
Scott
leave
But Scott also tells him, like, maybe you need to not be the person in charge of this case since you're clearly like have some
emotional.
kind of emotional attachment to it. And he was like, I am gonna be the one and I'm
Mhm.
gonna see like justice for Clay. And
Yeah.
um it's very clear that he's like not the man for the job.
No,
But
clearly not. So they leave, she gets in the car, and she is so happy to see Roscoe, and she just, like, cries all over him. And then she tells Scott about, like, growing up there in that town and, about her high school dating history with Clay, and they get to her aunt's house, and her brother is there, JT, and they tell him, everything that's happened, and he's very broody, very moody. He's a ex-military dude, of which there's quite a few in this series because a lot of them are other guys on the team. So he fits right in.
Yep. Big,
Um,
broody, scarred, ex-military,
yeah,
danger.
yes, has trouble sleeping, yeah. So then her aunt comes out, and of course she likes Scott immediately, and Millie knows there's no getting rid of him now, and she's like, "Damn it."
Yeah.
So, she makes lunch
Millie's
for
like, "Go away, I don't need you." And the
yeah.
aunt is like, "Do
"Oh,
you
aren't
want to
you
spend the
sweet?"
night? Stay here. Stay with us." So, yeah.
Oh, that's funny. And so Millie makes lunch for her and Scott, and the chief calls to say they found nothing in her blood work, which of course it could still be something like GHB, which exits your body like very quickly because it was probably at least 12 hours from whenever it happened to when she like got a blood test. Um, and so they go to this diner to meet up with her friend June, whose family like runs it or whatever, and get info about the night before because that's who she went out with.
We should say too that like immediately Scott is like cataloging things about her that are like surprising.
Mm.
So like the fact that her like what her family does for a living with like the fishing
Oh, like
and he's
River
like, "Oh,
Outfitters or
you know
whatever.
how
Yeah.
to fish and you like he because she's such a like gadget like he compares
Right.
her to Q from the James Bond movies.
Yeah.
And so he was like, he expected her to be like all clean lines and modern architecture and like minimalism. And then he
Yeah.
shows up and it's like cozy
Cozy
and
rustic cabin in the
yeah.
woods, and she's very
And
outdoorsy.
she, yeah. And so it's
It's
like
cute.
already he was already like intrigued by her, but like
Yeah.
the more he is learning about her, the more he's like
So many layers.
interested more. Yeah.
Yes, it's very cute. And so they go talk to June, and everybody at the diner, like, offers to lie for her. It's hilarious. They're like, "I can say you slept with over at my house last night. Oh, and then he's like, "And if that doesn't work, the 3 of us here will say we stabbed Clay." Like, they can't convict all of us. Clearly, there's no love lost for Clay in this town either, which is also interesting.
Yes, but also, like, both Millie and Scott are like, "Please, please don't do that.
Yeah.
Like, we actually do need to find out what happened.
Yeah.
Stop trying to muddy the waters." But
Yeah.
every person that they come across is like, I mean,
"I
"You
can say you
stayed
were with
here."
me." Yeah.
Every person.
So funny. And so then they go talk to the old bar owner, and it's much of the same, about like, yes, she was there with June, he didn't see much. It was St. Patrick's Day, they were busy, like a lot of that. And so on their way out, two of Clay's brothers roll up in a truck yelling at Millie. One of them, Silas, kind of like comes at her, and Scott steps in and kicks both their asses easily. He was a Marine
I
back
mean,
in the
but
day.
he is like I will say that this book had lots of acrobatic uh happenings in here from human and beast. And so I this was the first, he's like roundhouse kicking and jumping and doing, and I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
unexpected. And Millie was also like,
Oh,
"Y-
yeah,
are
fully
you were
WTF.
you are you not a lawyer? Were you not born with a silver spoon in your mouth?" And he's like,
Yes.
I mean, yes, but
It's
also
so funny because she is fully shook. And so when they get back to the house, she hears about some of his military history, and she's like, "I thought you were like a JAG lawyer. Like, I didn't know you were like a real, like, Marine." And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't go to law school until after that. Like, I'm a like, yeah, I was there."
yep, almost
Um,
drowned in one of my missions.
Yeah, no,
Definitely.
he's a full badass. And so she cleans up his hands, and then she shows him all the, like, smart features that she's made in the house, like all the gadgets that she's created to, like, make things easier for her aunt. And he is so in
I want that refrigerator because it keeps a tally of what's in there
Uh-huh.
and can recommend recipes based on what you have
Yes,
in
that's
your
like
fridge.
magic.
Like,
And also she keeps
yeah.
track of it. She's like, I know she uses it a lot because I get a ping every time she like asks for a recipe or
I mean,
something.
I don't need my fridge pinging people as to what
I
I'm
know. No,
me.
but that was really
However,
cute.
the idea that it could be like, you have things to make tacos would
Yeah,
make me very pleased.
that is very cool. And so he is like so into her, but he is a hot mess right now, like you said. And he's like, this can't like nothing can come from this. Like I need to just like be here for her and then like be done.
But
Um,
she is like touching his hands and like putting ointment, and
right.
it's
It's
hard.
very
It's so hard for Scott.
yes. So she makes pizza for dinner and her brother JT comes in to eat along with this woman Lila who her aunt has recently hired to do like cleaning around the cabins. And so they talk a little bit about the case and her brother says he heard about Clay's brothers um all being in a dust up recently about the family business. Like the two brothers that run it were like arguing with Clay about like diversifying or whatever and like they weren't
Yeah.
arguing.
And there's like
Um
four of four of them.
there's
So,
four
and
total, yeah.
there's four of them. And so there's like one who's not very involved, and then
He's in college, I guess, so he like
two
doesn't live there right now.
two who are running the business, and then Clay, who like is lawyering from afar. Like he's
Right.
lives in Charleston.
Yeah. He
Went to
lives
school in
in the big city.
Charleston, lives in the city, and
Yeah,
yeah. So he's not really around.
right. Um, and so after her brother and Lila leave, Millie and Scott do the dishes, and they're like at one point realize how close they're standing to each other, and like he kisses her, and of course it's amazing.
They were like under the water, under the
Like
soapy
holding
water,
hands.
touching hands, and I'm like,
Oh, it's so cute. And of course the
friends.
kiss is hot, and he immediately apologizes, and he's like, I shouldn't have. And she's like, of course, the best kiss of my life ends in an apology.
It's
Like,
a mistake.
damn it.
What is this? Yeah.
Like, ouchie. But she knows he's right too. Like they should not be doing this for many reasons, one of which is that he's her lawyer right now, which is not good.
Yeah.
So,
But she's very like, I was not supposed to like this.
yeah, I was not supposed to like him, like at all. And yet. And so after a nightmare, Scott goes outside and he finds her brother who also can't sleep much. And they kind of bond over their like military trauma. And JT asks him to go with Millie on the charter in the morning because it's a bunch of people from the city and he doesn't know them and he wants to just make sure that, like everything's on the up and up. And
Like, I think
JT,
at this moment, people are kind of worried about her more than she's worried about herself, just
yeah.
because the situation is so weird. And
Hmm.
it seems like JT is not somebody who like trusts easily anyway, but like with his sister being in that situation, he's just like, probably
Yeah.
she shouldn't be alone ever.
Yeah. And then as JT's about to go inside, he tell or go up on a run, I can't remember. He tells Scott that he chops wood when the nightmares get to be too much and that like it helps. And so later on in the morning, after it's actually daylight, Millie walks outside with coffee when she hears her brother chopping wood, and she sees the chief falling out of her aunt's bedroom window and then leaning back in to kiss her. And she's like, what? Like, when did that happen? It's very cute. And then she walks over to talk to her brother and finds that it's not her brother, but it's Scott chopping wood. Um,
Very
and
manly
he's hot.
child.
She's like, "Oh, noes." Um,
I did not know he could do that
yeah.
either.
And so they talk about the charter, and like both of their love of fishing. And then a car pulls up and they're like, "Oh, they're here." And the window opens and people start firing at them. So Scott and Millie kind of drop and roll under the like boat trailer. And then they kind of run over like behind the bunkhouse where her brother's been staying. Millie has some like exploding
Yeah, I was
squirrels
gonna say,
that
Millie has booby traps
she
and
had
also
planned to
like
use them as
poisonous
like a
poison.
joke against her brother, I think she says. Like, so they're not like they're like not meant to hurt somebody. They're supposed to just be like like a joke or
Boom.
whatever,
Yeah.
but like she can if she uses them right, they could hurt somebody. And then she's got, yeah, like booby traps with like herbs that make you itch and stuff like that, like just random stuff around because she's always gadgeting. So she's got like things going on everywhere.
Yeah.
Um, and they also have both snagged like fishing knives, which is all they have. Nobody has a gun. And so they're trying to make a plan. And so they both they kind of separate to draw, attention, and she like sends out the squirrels or whatever. They both get a little beat up, but Scott ends up killing all 3 of the people who are trying to kill them.
Yeah.
And they're getting looked at by EMTs afterward, while the
Because
cops are
they
kind of
like
like,
call the police and yeah. I'm like, this poor
um
girl's been home for 2 days, and 2 out of 2 days she's had to call the police. Not good.
and, like, because there's dead bodies where she is. Yeah. And so if it started raining, so the cops are trying to, like, cover up the scene with the bodies because the medical examiner is still en route, and, the chief gets there, and Scott and they talk for a minute, and, they had already given their statements, like, to the other police that were already there. And so he lets them go inside, and she pulls out this gadget to stitch him up. It, like, started off as a stapler, and she, like, turned it into, like, a stitching thing. I don't know, it sounded cool.
Yeah, it's like a stitcher
Um
kit.
And so after lunch,
It
the
hits
cops
that,
have
it like throws not anesthetic, but like antiseptic as it
yeah,
stitches. I was like, she
that's
has
really
good
cool how
ideas,
they
our Millie.
yeah, for sure. And so after lunch, the cops have kind of cleared out, and Verna and Valerie Montgomery show up. They're old friends of Millie's, they're twins. They were also at the bar that night, that she can't
Yeah.
remember.
But they
She was
both
drugged.
remember talking to her, so they're, Millie and Scott are both like, "Oh, please tell
Tell
us."
us what happened. So basically they say they walked in that night to the bar right as her and June were going to leave, but Valerie, who is a nurse at the hospital, wanted to talk to Millie about this bed like invention that she had an idea for the hospital. And so Millie said she would stay and talk to her about it. Um and then Verna, who's very pregnant with I guess her third kid, says that at one point Valerie left and then Clay approached the table when it was just the two of them sitting there and wanted to talk, and Millie agreed, which surprised Verna because obviously she was around for all their history and like knows they broke up a long time ago and everything.
It
Um
surprises Millie too, so she's like, "Did I willingly
Right, like, I seemed like
want
I
to talk
wanted to
to him?"
talk to him. Yeah. And so Verna said after about 10 minutes, she had to go pee, and so she went to pee, and when she came out, they were gone from the bar. And so she says she walked out and saw Millie climbing into Clay's truck, and they left together.
Like scooting over, like she climbs in and into the driver's side and scooches
Right,
over. Is what she says she saw.
right. And so she's like, "You seemed like you were fine," and I was surprised, but, like, you're a grown up, like, I didn't think I, needed to do anything, but I'm really sorry
She
because clearly something went wrong.
Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is that she does apologize, like, a whole lot.
Yeah,
She's just like, "If I had known, if it had looked like, I just didn't, like, I'm so
right.
sorry." And Millie's kind of like, "Well, I mean,
It's
I
not
don't
your fault.
remember,
Yeah.
but if I looked, some drugs can, you don't look like you're,
Right, you
like,
don't look like you're
fallen and
drugged.
passed out or anything,
Yeah.
so it's fine." Um, but
And she
yeah,
basically gets them to agree to ask around town, about other women that Clay has left the bar with recently, because apparently that's a very common thing for him to do. Um, and Scott feels like that kill squad coming after Millie has, like, awakened something in him, like, he's not feeling like his normal self, he's feeling very protective of her, and, like, he's gonna make sure that she stays safe no matter what.
yeah.
Um, and that's the end of chapter 12. So,
Mm,
yeah, lots of things afoot.
adventure.
Um,
There are a lot of moving pieces in this,
yeah,
and so you gotta see what
yes.
goes where.
All right, we'll see you next week for the middle section.
See you then.
Bye.